Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, it's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. We come to you live and in living color every Wednesday evening, 6:30 Central Time. Dominic Guanzon with me today, no Joe Viso. Sorely miss him today because of the fact that I've been talking about this movie for a few months now. Saw it in theaters back in late January. It was a late 2024 release. Actually, it was a early 2025 release, technically, in America. It premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival last year. But I've been talking about this movie for a long while because it wasn't in theaters in America very often, or very, very frequently. Very long, I guess I should say. And eventually then, I said to the guys, I said to Dom and Joe, I said, I'd love to review this on a slow week. I think this is a great film, and I think this is a movie that needs a little bit more recognition than it's getting and stuff like that. So unfortunately, Joe can't be here to talk about Mike Leigh's Hard Truths. We will dive into this movie, too. I think one of the best... It might be the best movie last year that nobody's really seen. You can say that. I mean, you could say that about like Poor Things. You could say that, and there's arguments to be made. But I think all of those movies really did find their audience. Poor Things, The Holdovers, a lot of the movies last year, even Longlegs, some of the movies that I consider to be the best movies of 2024, I think found their audience, even if they weren't a, by definition, financial success. I think they did find their audience, and I think Letterboxd is proof of that, and IMDb and other websites. This is a movie I think needs a lot more TLC, a lot more attention paid to it. And Mike, and you know what? It's kind of like how Mike Leigh, though, has been operating, though, for so many years. He's 82 years old. He's an English director, and he's made a lot of movies, and I hate to admit it, a lot of movies I haven't seen, but I've seen a few. Life is Sweet from 1990. That's a great movie with Jim Broadbent and Allison Steadman. That's a phenomenal film. He's just a really great humanist, and he's now made 2 movies. I've given both of them 4 stars. So I think he's a wonderful filmmaker. I think it's a treat that he's still working at 82 years old. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about Hard Truths, Dom. I think there's a lot to chew on with this movie. But again, we're live tonight talking this movie. No Joe, unfortunately. No real news to touch on either. Really want to just keep it centralized on this. So first things first, though, Dom, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's a crazy time to be in Chicagoland. The weather is all over the place, same as our National Guard, and I'll stop there. But in terms of how I am personally doing, yeah, it's end of summer, so things are like events are happening, which is obvious. It's obvious to say, but it is true that it's the end of summer, so everyone's rushing to get their last word in when it comes to the summer or the first events of fall as we go into September. So it's just keeping up with, like, it spikes in activity, and then by the holidays it starts to slow down. So this is probably one of the most active times of the year for me, job wise, events wise, like personal wise. So just trying to keep up with that. But I still make time. I truly going to the library, right? Because this is not in theaters, to my knowledge. But going to the library is so nice. It's so lovely that it's there. I am not a frequenter of the library, unfortunately, because I truly do not have that time. But it is there when I need it. And that is the beauty of the library and things like it. I've always said that, and I've always read from what other people have said, which is if libraries were invented today, we would laugh at it. We would laugh at the idea of like, a building that you can go in for free and you can just get a book or a DVD or a record for free. You can leave your kids there after school for free. What a joke, right? That would just be unfathomable in 2025 or even the decades and decades before. It's just this thing that is just beautiful and lovely. So support your local library. Update your library card. That way, when you need it, it's there.
I've always, now that I've lived in three different communities and stuff, I was later in Dubuque getting one than I wanted to. But it's a good thing to get to, even if you don't use it. I've learned this is because if you get a library card in the region that you live in, that ups the number of library cards in circulation, which also encourages funding.
Ah,
And
because
so
that's the number. That's the hard metric
that's
that
the hard
governments pay
metric
attention to. Yeah.
is how many people in a certain community have a library card. So it's a worthwhile thing to get. It doesn't cost you anything. You just need a piece of mail to prove that you live in the community, and you don't even have to use it. But you are contributing to the funding directly that the library itself is getting. And we have a gorgeous one out here in Dubuque. I'm not going to lie. We have a really nice one out here. All the communities I've lived in, I've had really good libraries. There's a really good library in Peru and LaSalle. Both of them I frequent in. And it's a wonderful place. That's where I got Hard Truths as well too. Seeing it at the library about a month ago reminded me, you know what? Let's get this on the schedule now. It's kind of been in the periphery of the schedule. Let's get it on here and actually talk about it, and we shall do just that. Again, Catherine and I caught this in theaters in late January. Was only out here for about a week and a half in Dubuque, and I did not know a lot about it going in. I knew that it was critically acclaimed. I knew Mike Lee, and I seen a couple critics I like on Letterboxd log it. And it was just something, it's got one poster. There's the one poster, which is also the DVD and Blu-ray cover and everything. And it's just a poster like, it just kind of sticks with you. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those. It catches the eye of people who are known to like look for like smaller movies and stuff. The basic plot of this movie, though, is it stars Marianne Jean-Baptiste, which is just a great name to say. I'm going to say it as much as I possibly can the next hour. Marianne Jean-Baptiste plays Pansy, who is this irascible, difficult woman who lives with her husband, Curtly, who is played by David Weber, and her son, Moses, played by Twain Barrett. Moses is 22 years old, I believe. And it essentially follows the life of this family through mainly the eyes and the perspective of Pansy, who, again, is this angry, irascible, impossible to please woman who walks around bitter, offended by the slightest brush. And she's basically clubbed her husband and her son into silence, to the point where they really kind of sleepwalk through life. They don't really engage. They try their best. They've even learned of trying not to sets her off. So they basically just kind of stroll through their own life. The complete contrast to Pansy is her sister Chantel, played by Michelle Austin. She has a lovely relationship with her two grown daughters, Annie Nelson and Sophia Brown. She has a great relationship with her daughters. She's a hairstylist, where Pansy sits at home for much of the day in her pajamas. Chantel is out cutting hair, conversing with her clients and things like that. And even their two living spaces, I think, is the biggest contrast of the movie too. Pansy's apartment or house, I guess, is very antiseptic. It doesn't even look lived in. It looks like one of those cooking show kitchens that, it's like, okay, now do this when everything's put away and not on the counter. You know what I mean? I want to see, go rummage through some fucking cabinets to find a cutting board. You know what I mean? It doesn't even look lived in, where Chantel's apartment is, got the laughter of her daughters, the conversation. She's got plants everywhere. It's filled with life. And it's filled with, this happiness. It's not a perfect life by any means. No life is. It's not just a complete, sunshine and rain dichotomy. Chantel's got her own, her own issues as well, but they're certainly not as readily apparent and as quick triggering as Pansy's. So that's the movie. It's 97 minutes. It's a very short 97 minutes too, but it gives you a look into the window of this irascible, I keep using that word, just angry woman who, one of the key lines of dialogue in the movie is when Marianne Jean-Baptiste, when she is recounting her day, and she sneers and is disgusted even by the sight of people laughing, and she says that line, that beautifully delivered line, that cheerful grinning people can't stand them. She's got such
put the accent on it too.
Yeah, exactly. That's my Marianne Jean-Baptiste impression. I don't know if it's that good, but But she's outstanding. We're going to talk about her a lot in this too. I want to get your reaction though, because I've already written a review of this movie too. What was your first general impressions though of Hard Truths?
As someone who has to unfortunately scour social media a lot for news and someone who has the mental capacity not to process it, but the mental capacity to endure the vomit that comes from social media. I often see the word trigger warning. And, we can laugh and we can roll our eyes at that. But in some contexts, and knowing certain people in my life and I've met out there, I can get it. I can understand that. I think that trigger warning doesn't necessarily have a place in film. I just think you should be able to sit down and watch a movie and just watch it. And I still don't believe that to this day. But I have never been closer to that idea than watching this movie. Because this is, like, in so many ways, more universal in its pointed simplicity of someone who is just falling apart. Even though it looks like this is a fairly urban setting, I don't know if it's exactly specified where these people live, except in the UK, right? But it is so seemingly in some ways suburban, right? Of people who, yes, sleepwalk through their lives, of people who just deal with it and not in any productive way, because there is a time to just work through it and compartmentalize and get through your day so that you can tackle things later. But there's no tackling things later for this family. And in such a way, it is this depth of despair, right? There's no way out. I kept waiting for this plot to reveal like a flashback or a big line, a big dropping point where someone's like, Pansy's daughter died in a fire, and that's what caused her to be this way. There is, they do mention the mother who Pansy and Chantel's mother who passed, but that didn't seem to be too tragic of a thing in the grand scheme of things. It seemed like a fairly, person died of old age or maybe an older person's disease, but for the most part, it wasn't out of the ordinary in terms of what is driving her despair and Pansy's despair. And in that way, it really just leaves you with, good God, there are people in the world who live like this. And you can see that reverberate through this whole family. And particularly Pansy's husband and Pansy's son. And in some ways we can relate to that. That's the sad thing. That's what makes this, I'm so glad that the name of this movie is not Hard Truth, but Hard Truths, right? It's plural, of which there are several. And I would like for us to discuss what we think those hard truths are, what they actually go through with it. I don't think we're going to be too obsessed with spoilers, right, in this movie, simply because it's just laid to bear here. And it's not that kind of film. So just, it's so engrossing in its simplicity, really. There's hardly, it's just very basic, but very solid filmmaking up to spectacular writing and fantastic acting here from everyone involved. But of course, Marianne Jean-Baptiste. So that's, in short, I'm just thoroughly impressed and engrossed by this.
It's become a common saying. I don't know how common, but kind of with sort of the destigmatization of mental health and everything like that. One of the slogans you might have heard over the last several years is the phrase "hurt people, hurt people," and this movie is kind of to address the title in that way. I think that's one of the hard truths in this movie, is also just the fact that like some people are this way.
Yes.
And I don't think this is a wholly uncommon thing. I also believe that if you or somebody has seen like mental illness up close, be it like depression, schizophrenia, anhedonia, paranoia, you kind of come face to face with it in this movie in a lot of ways. And it's very stark in its portrayal. It's also in some ways like Michael Lee kind of leans into some of the comedy of this whole thing too. There's that great scene at the furniture store involving Pansy having a outburst with the manager of a furniture store, as well as a couple that are like canoodling on a couch. This young couple that's like canoodling on the couch, and they're like, and the guy's like, "Are you going to buy it?" And she's like, "I don't want DNA all over it." You know what I mean? And then she gets into that argument with the dude looking for a parking spot out in the front. And then there's the one clip that's used as kind of like the kicker joke. Because I didn't see the trailer for this until after the movie. I went back and watched the trailer. I think the trailer does a really good job of giving you the gist of this movie. The trailer ends with that kicker of her asking why a baby's out onesie needs pockets. And I think that's a great kicker for that, because it does have these funny moments. It does, like it's because it's funny. Like it's kind of like, and it's not. I love this movie that I'll mention, but it's not on this level in terms of like the sadness it evokes and everything. But it's kind of like Paul Giamatti's character in The Holdovers, where he is just so bitter and so like cantankerous and miserable, that like it gets funny to a point, watching him react in what is otherwise just like banal situations and such. But it does hit you in a lot of different ways. There's a few scenes in there, namely the graveyard scene, the cemetery scene, the flowers on the grave scene between Chantel and Pansy, where Chantel just asks her the very pointed question, like, why can't you enjoy life? Why do you have to walk around criticizing everybody? And I think the other important part of it too, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but in its examination, because I do think this is a mental illness movie in a lot of ways, I think its examination too is like how you said, how it reverberates across the entire family. Like when she goes at the end of the movie, when she goes over to Chantel's house, it's a friggin' dark cloud over the entire dinner. Just her presence. She hasn't really said anything. It's just her presence.
I like. There are a few movies. There are quite a few movies that have scenes similar to that, but it's so effective here. Like it's oh man, I can't even find the right metaphor for it. It's just so devastating. The silence, the 1,000-yard stare from. And it helps that it's such a contrast. Like Chantel's two daughters are living such active lives. They have been blessed with a normal mind, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but in comparison to Pansy and her family's life, that it's so tragic. It makes you think like the life that could have been. And they touch on that tragedy too, of like, oh, why did you marry this man? And they do touch upon it where it's like, well, I was scared. I was alone. And that's another thing with Pansy that makes her such a compelling character. A truly 3, 4, 5, 6-dimensional character. Truly. Such a dude, psychologists are going to be eaten with this one. And unfortunately, TikTok psychologists are going to be eaten with this one. Blue sky psychologists. You know what I'm talking about? But no.
Blue skies.
No. But like it's not like in high school, I have worked with volunteer work, right? I have worked with severely autistic children before. And I'm very fortunate that I had that exposure in high school, right? And for these children, it's just they have such severe physical deformities. They have such severe mental disabilities that they need full-time 24/7 supervision, right? But with Pansy, she can function just enough where, like you look at her too, she looks normal from a distance, right? To the point where, a dude drives up to her and like, are you gonna leave this parking spot? They can have that interaction, right? It's not readily apparent. And that's part of the tragedy of it, right? You look at when they have that dinner, that Mother's Day dinner, or that brunch, that lunch, right? That is just such an effective scene. The silence and the reflection of that on the husband and the son. I think the husband is far more gone than the son, There's a glint of
Oh
hope in
yeah.
the sun. The husband is just as a husk of a man. It's so sad. And yeah, that dinner scene. I just want to shout out that dinner scene because that was like that's the climax, right?
Yeah.
Of it for me. I'm sorry, I lost the sauce on what your question was, but
No, it blows you away though, in just sort of the understated humanity of this movie too, and that's what Mike Leigh's movies are really famous for, is just kind of drawing on big emotions through simple like premises. This is not a very complex movie. There's not a great deal that really happens, like
no,
like big major events. I would argue, kind of watching it back, I would like 'cause now that I've seen it twice, I would argue that like I think the only time the movie kind of gets a little out of order is that scene, and I get what it tries to do in humanizing the daughters, but the whole scene with the daughter's company doesn't really matter at the end of the day. That whole boardroom thing with her, because she works for a skincare company.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if you could ascribe any sort of like external meaning for that scene.
I believe yeah. It's the two daughters, and I think they each have a, like there's a scene where they each have a job.
Yes.
And it shows them doing their job. And you're right. I think its only purpose is to humanize the daughters a bit more. And I think it works. I don't think it's too, you're right. It did stand out, but if anything, it was a breath of fresh air. Because again, the whole point of Chantal and her daughters, that whole family, is to just contrast. Because I feel like without that family, I mean, a lot of this plot wouldn't work, but without that side of things, without that normalcy, if we don't see that normalcy, like we go up for some air for a minute, then this becomes like drudgery. At that point, I think that would like remove so much impact of going back to Pansy. And
That's a good point.
yeah, I can absolutely see that where it's like, because it's jarring. If anything, I'll even say this: Jean-Baptiste is so good at making you feel so fucking bad for everything here that when you finally, gasp for air with these daughters, it's like, oh thank God. Okay, yeah, let's go back to these problems for a minute, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess because you do get to see, I guess for sort of like equilibrium, now that you mention it too, you get to see like Kurtley's, physically demanding job.
Yes.
You get to see him in that role. You get to see Moses kind of like, take those long walks and stuff and like, mess with the flight simulator on his computer and things like that. And then you get the equilibrium of like, in addition to Pansy, and then you get Chantel, and then you get the two daughters and their lives. So I guess you could see there's a balancing act right there in terms of like all six of these people.
Actually, and you mentioned it, Kurtley, you mentioned it, Kurtley, the husband. It's like when he's around Pansy, it's abusive. It really is abusive, and it's so sad because when he's not around her, he's normal. He's obviously affected, right? You can still see it on his face, but he's fairly normal. He gets the job done.
Yeah, he's not incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere near to the incompetent to the level that she makes him out to be. You know what I mean?
It's purely emotional. All of this is emotional, mental, and psychological. That is the core focus, or that's the core approach of the emotional side of this movie. There's only so much action in the plot. It's all relationship. It's all comparing the relationships and psychological journeys. This is a deeply affecting movie.
How great is Marianne Jean-Baptiste?
I actually feel like we can't say much simply because it would just be a synonym for great, right? Like it's engrossing. Like you lose yourself in it. I don't think I've seen her much in anything else before.
I really hadn't either.
Yeah.
She is an English actress. She's only 58 years old. The couple of movies I'm gonna say like you might have seen her in was and we actually just watched this not too long ago, Catherine and I noticed her and I was like, that's Marianne Jean-Baptiste. She's in the Sandra Bullock movie 28 Days from 2000. She's one of the patients in rehab.
Okay.
And she has a decent supporting role in that movie. She's not one of the primary supporting roles, but she gets her own visit scene with her family and everything. Like they did write a character for her in that movie. She's in that. She's in Spy Game with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt. She's also in the movie. It's been a while since I've even thought about this movie, though. She's in Takers, that movie that's got Matt Dillon, Paul Walker, T.I. the rapper, Idris Elba. It came out in like 2010. So she's been in things, a lot of smaller roles, though her predominantly her starring roles are in English or British movies, though.
Yeah. And to see her come out like this, it truly is like, man. Like, if you pitch this movie to someone like a layman who maybe watches the occasional film or like will watch the big superhero film, this is going to be a tough pitch because it's like, yeah, you want to watch a woman just berate her whole family for an hour and just like everyone she knows in not a funny way, right? This isn't Diary of a Mad Black Woman or anything, right? It's not. This is a drama. Like it says comedy drama on Wikipedia, but it is a drama with like the occasional drop of comedy. I almost wouldn't call it a comedy drama, honestly. I think that's a not a but a mischaracterization. Yeah.
I'm going to edit Wikipedia right now and fix that.
Yeah, man. It's but with her, I think her character will just be studied for so long because it's so many dimensions. Where you can see she's unreliable, first and foremost. That needs to be stated. Just with the way she mischaracterizes everything in her life.
And we see that with how she recaps the furniture store.
Yes. Specifically the furniture store parking lot where it's like, I almost got attacked, right?
Yes.
When you look at what actually happened, where it's like, no, this was just, I don't know. But
entirely preventable.
She's unreliable, but even then, you still can't help but feel sorry for her when she talks about her mother, who could, chances are probably did mistreat her. But to the extent we will never know. We truly don't. Because it could have been as bad as Pansy could be a splitting image of her mother. And if that's the case, dear God, what a terrible tale of passing on trauma. But part of me is also thinking, there's always this chance that maybe her mom was just maybe like slightly favored Chantel. Maybe her mom was just, had her moments, but wasn't that bad. And it truly is maybe it's the chemicals in Pansy's brain. Maybe it's Pansy's inability to take responsibility for things. And at the age at which she's at, I know Jean-Baptiste's actual age is 58, according to Wikipedia, right? So I'm going to assume she's 58 years old, unless stated otherwise in the film. But it's like, yeah, at the age of 58, maybe it's like old dog, new tricks. You can't, it's hard to shove someone away from the entrenchment of despair, sadness, stubbornness, and an inability to see the world a different way. It's so difficult. I am grateful on multiple levels that they didn't delve into politics, because this is the kind of person that is ripe for programming from conservative far right media or even just bad TikToks, right? But that's all aside. Truly, this is everyone. I think, and if you don't, God bless you, enjoy your life. But I think everyone kind of knows someone like this. Would you say that? Is that a fair assessment? Someone like this, not to this extent, right? Yeah,
but somebody like this, somebody who's oppressively contagiously negative.
Yeah, and I think that I'm sorry, I have so much to say. This happens all the time with good movies. I have so much to say. I go over the goddamn place. So I'm sorry for my rambling. Let me focus in on this. I think this movie, one of the hard truths, so we'll go back to that. We'll talk about the hard truths that this film puts out. I think the hard truth here is that this is life. This is what a life is. And it will test you on how you value and look at life. Like how you value a human life, right? Because it's easy to look at someone who's a hero and go, yeah, that's a life worth living. You look at a child, right, who's so innocent, hasn't lived life yet, so many possibilities, right, pure in so many ways. Maybe they're a little shit, but they're mostly pure, right? That's you value that life. Chantel, perfectly normal woman. There's that beautiful scene that contrasts with everything else where she's hanging out with her daughters, and it's the most loving and healthy scene I've seen of a family in forever. Right? Where they're joking, they're dancing. This is not the family dinner, but the lunch, but this is just the three of them. But yeah, someone like Pansy. There are so many people. There are so many scenes where the camera should have continued following all the people that Pansy harassed. And then Pansy is the character that you go and go, it's that bitch from, in an Adam Sandler movie, or it's that mean ass woman that you laugh at in a Judd Apatow movie. But no, like, bruh, we're staying with her. This is her life. That's a human life that you're looking at. How much will you tolerate? How much will you personally tolerate sitting there? I know you get to walk away after 2 hours, and Chantel has to deal with this woman. This whole family has to deal with this woman. And I will end my speech right here by saying, how do you feel after looking at this woman, getting tired of her for 2 hours, right? 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Very well said. I'll actually tie in with something I want to say, closing thoughts, what you just said there about like how we have like a definite amount of time with Pansy for this movie. Like that'll tie in very nicely actually with closing thoughts of mine too. So I'm happy that'll circumvent. And Marianne Jean-Baptiste too. She handles this character so well. She's got this. And I've seen her in a handful of movies. I'd never seen her in a starring role before. I'm not sure how many she has as far as where she's in a starring role or a co-lead role. But man, she has got this ability that she has these like painful eyes. And it's not like this, like when I saw her in 28 Days, that Sandra Bullock movie, different tone, more of a dramedy, comedy drama, definitely has some very dramatic beats to it, but also is more lighthearted in a way. But she doesn't look like this. And granted, it was 24 years ago, but she doesn't look like this. Like her eyes aren't the same. Like this movie, she has these like blank gazes and these painful eyes that communicates decades worth of something that we don't know. And that's really fascinating. And it's also, too, the fact that whole scene when they're putting flowers on their mother's grave, Chantel and Pansy, is that she doesn't even know why her first reaction to everything is so fucking negative all the time. You know what I mean? She doesn't understand. Like, she can't even tell you why two people that she's never seen before and will never see again canoodling on a couch at a furniture store pisses her off to her very core. She can't tell you that. You know what I mean? And it's not like she's making snide jokes or something like that under her breath and, for the amusement of herself. No, there's like this true enraged bitterness and like offense taken by it too.
She needs to like let them know that she's making fun of them, right?
Yes.
Because in so many other, especially English, British comedies or dramas or whatever, it would be like the classic snip of them walking away under their breath. That's the most British thing possible. But here, no, she's going at it. She is confronting every single person, and it is funny how like every 1 in 10 or whatever, she has like kind of a point where she's not.
It's kind of true.
The one that struck me the most, I think, was her husband. I'm failing to remember, but it was like she was yelling at her husband, which she does multiple times in this movie, to the point where it is abuse, in my opinion. But I think it's like, I've completely forgotten it now. But I think it was he's like making excuses for himself where it's like, no, this is on you. And even at one point I'm like, nah, bro, you got to stick up for yourself. Or like, you got to own it, man. Cause I think she's right. I think she's right in this one specific case.
He's so meek, though. That's the thing. Like, he's like pathetically meek, but also you would fucking be too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're essentially walking on a minefield, and even when you don't step on a mine, one goes off. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. You're avoiding minefields. You're avoiding mines, but then you didn't realize there was a drone shooting missiles at you, right?
Yeah, it's like you ever play Silver Surfer on the Nintendo Entertainment System and
Okay.
shit's coming at you from 6 different directions? You know
I've
what I
played
mean?
bullet
That's-
hell games, yes.
Yeah, bullet hell. Okay, that's a good term. But I'm like, that's just the first thing that came to my mind when you mentioned
Sure.
that.
No.
too, with
I know what you're talking
minefields
about.
and
I know
shit.
what you're talking about.
Like that's what it is, and there's something too. I've seen different analysis on the ending, and I have
Yes.
my own kind of thought about it too. And we can dive into spoiler territories too, because this is a niche movie.
Yeah.
And this is one of those movies too. I think even if you know how it ends, there's a beauty in watching this. There's no great
It's all
plot
about the
revelation.
It's not the
There's
destination. It's not
no
the
great
destination.
plot relation.
Yeah.
No. So yeah, I mean, coming back then, I want to talk briefly about the ending, and I saw this just before we went live. John Waters, the great director John Waters of Pink Flamingos, Hairspray, and everything, he makes his annual top 10 favorite films list. He put this one on his list, and he summed it up beautifully as only John Waters could. I love John Waters with a passion, one of my favorite filmmakers. I want to read his little blurb about what he said about Hard Truths. He said better in like 100 words than what I said in 1,000 on my website. So we will come back to that here on Sleepless with Steve. Don't go anywhere. We are talking Mike Leigh's Hard Truths. It's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. Back and better than ever. It's Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. We're talking hard truths. I wanted to mention this because I was just reading a little bit before we came on the air about hard truths and stuff like that. It's got a 95 on Rotten Tomatoes. There's some great critical analysis of it. I really highly recommend reading a couple reviews of this movie. I just love that's the other thing I love about a great movie. I love watching great movies. I love writing about great movies. I love reading about great movies. And this loans itself because it's sparse yet specific, which is weird and sounds unorthodox. It loans itself to a lot of great observations. John Waters is one of them. Filmmaker John Waters, Pink Flamingos, Hairspray, Cry Baby, Desperate Living. Have you seen any Waters movies? Have you watched any?
You're talking about the original Hairspray too, right?
The original Hairspray,
Yeah.
yep.
I don't think
Probably his most commercial.
I probably have. I just don't realize it. It's one of those.
He makes some disgusting movies. Like Pink Flamingos is one of the greatest shock movies. Look it up. I think I've mentioned it in passing on the show. That's your homework just for the hell of it. When you have some your elusive free time, read the Wikipedia of Pink Flamingos. But anyway,
Boy,
John Waters named Hard Truths his fourth favorite movie of 2024. And here, I'll read you what he said about it. A horribly sad and sometimes hilariously funny portrait of the most unpleasant sourpuss woman in the history of cinema. She's a rotten mother and a terrible wife, and everyone around her is racked with pain except the audience, which slowly begins to root for her. A wretched experience I'll cherish forever.
yeah, I think Pansy is such a force of nature, truly. And it's just back to back to back with her, and her descent is so like she. Here's the thing with Pansy. I believe she will be characterized as just angry mode, which makes sense. I understand that, but she really does change over the course of this film, and not for the better. Like it goes from cantankerous to anger to spite to then just utter desolation, just empty, to the point where she's really contemplating suicide. She doesn't say it outright, but well, actually, she kind of does say it outright, right? Like just the days where she doesn't wish she wake up, which
I just want it all to stop.
Just want it all to stop, which are telltale signs of the unfortunate act, and it just the film just kind of hangs there, and we'll talk about that ending, but it really does hold up a mirror to where your emotions lie. And like I said, do you value human life even when it's like this? Even when it's a freaking asshole, will you value it? Do you show empathy for this? Are you just disgusted? As John Waters is saying, he is disgusted by it, to the point where he's almost reveling in the disgust, or like, in awe of the disgust. And for some other people, it might bring something out of them because they have seen this before, unfortunately, which is like, again, this is the closest I've been to like, hey, you think you need a trigger warning for this goddamn movie. So yeah, it's revealing, right? Art reveals.
Yeah, it's like I said, this is a really deceptively complex movie too. We'll shift to the ending too, not closing thoughts, but the ending itself. Because this movie, I had to process it for a little bit at like the way how it ends. Because basically what happens is Curtly on the job, since he works a laborious kind of like physical labor job. I'm trying to remember, is he a plumber or is he like a mover? I'm trying to remember because again, this movie doesn't. I think he's a plumber actually,
okay.
And they're moving a tub. Him and his partner are moving a tub. And Pansy, it goes without saying, Pansy fucking hates his partner, and he's the most like generic person. Like he just seems like a decent dude, of course. But anyway, they're hauling this tub out, this cast iron tub, and Curtly hurts his back, like badly. And as somebody who's badly hurt their back, the lumbar region of my back, it's watching it the second time. I hurt my back earlier this year again. It's the third time in the last like 3 years I've done it. And I sit on my ass for a living, which is the hilarious part. Probably why my spine's weak. But like, man, he sells it. Because I'll tell you, when you do it, I don't know if you've ever hurt your back in a way, like to the point where you can't stand or you have to sit in like an unorthodox position to get remotely comfortable. Man, the tears well, like you almost want to scream. You almost just want to scream. But it like hurts to sit, it hurts to stand, it hurts to lay, like it everything. So he badly throws out his back to the point where he's not going to be able to work for unless he can get one of them Medrol dose packs. Shout out to my doctor. But anyway, so he goes home then to Pansy lying in bed, and the last shot of the well, technically his partner goes and tells him that he's hurt, tells Pansy that he's hurt. The last shot is the exchanging stare that Pansy and Curtly give one another, and then the movie ends. Now, there's some criticism can be drawn to the opaqueness of the ending. How I view it, though, especially after seeing it twice, is it's a radical shift in vulnerability. Buddy of mine mentioned this even too. He kind of helped me put a thumbprint on it. It's a radical change in vulnerability in that moment, because Pansy knows that he is going to be incapacitated for a minute. Can she pick up that slack and sort of be the emotional vessel for him? And Curtly looks at her, already knowing the answer, that he's more fucked now than he's ever been. Because now he can't work. Now he can't work. He knows she won't change. And now they're really screwed. Where they were on a floating door in the middle of an ocean before, that door has gotten swept away. They're going to sink. That's how I read it, at least.
Yeah, and it all rapidly from there. It will rapidly fall apart, unless drastic steps are taken, of which there are. It is low. The lifeline there really does become the sister Chantal and the son,
Moses
and Moses. Yes, and able to, which I am glad that they showed that scene, and it wasn't just like a feel good scene, right? But that scene of Moses having a lifeline. That does close his arc, and I'm very, which is a hope. That's all it is a lifeline, a window of hope. What will he do? But even then, it's up in the air. It's like, will he help the family or will he escape? Right? Will he just leave? Which, as someone who's probably been living like this way for 22 years, I wouldn't blame him for doing so, truly.
Not at all. Not at all.
As rough it is to say. So it is in that moment of, again, in that moment of question. This really does bring up another thing where it's like, I hate the people who are too obsessed with plot. To the point where they don't get any story out of it, if you know what I mean. With the plot, it's like, okay, can you give us the ending? It's like, oh, give us a shot of Curtly dead, or give us a shot of him in the hospital. Like, no. What is the actual intention of what is actually being said here? And this is where it all comes to a head. Here is where, the hard truths once again come forward. As you said, Steve, they are true, probably really, really fucked. That is the hard truth of their situation. And I am very, very...
And it happened like that.
Yes.
And it happened like that.
It happened like that. It's all of this was hanging by a thread. And it finally snapped. Because of course it would have. Of course. Dude is busting his ass every day. But he has no like emotional outlet or emotional grounding. He is traumatized. Like, trauma is tossed around so easily, but dear God, it absolutely applies here. So for again, I think I have a little bit more hope in the sense that we do see Chantal and her daughters and that side of the family, but as the unit, because I think they were also hinting towards, not hinting, but blatantly showing that Chantal was saying, you need to get away. You need to leave, just because you got to do something for yourself, because you can't even take care of your own son and your own husband. So just leave, which is doing everyone a favor, right?
Yes.
She's not being like, the stereotypical proud woman who needs no man. No. This is just everyone needs to just quarantine and be chill and just learn to live with themselves for a moment.
This isn't self-care. This is self-stabilization.
Truly, that's what that is. And then there's the scene of Pansy taking the clothes and everything out of the closet of Kurtley's belongings out of the closet. So I think it was hinting towards that, and it's just these little nuggets of hope of what is really a bleak and like oh shit ending. Yeah.
Yeah, it marinates in your mind. It did mine after we saw it, and it did when I watched it again on Friday night. Like it's a wonderful movie too, and you mentioned it too. Like, there's not many. I mean, because a lot of movies, especially American movies, and I feel like you don't have to like lift up foreign cinema or world cinema as it's known to like. By bashing American cinema, but oftentimes by watching especially critically acclaimed, because believe me, other countries make shitty movies too. It's not
Yes.
exclusive to America.
Tiniest rant possible. Everyone makes fun of America for ruining Godzilla. Bruh, no one ruined Godzilla easier than the Japanese themselves. They turned that freaking lizard into everything. Superhero, a Power Ranger, machine. Yeah, so I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I've seen bad Bollywood movies. I've seen bad movies from places like Istanbul. Like, believe me, every country is capable of producing a shitty movie.
Yeah.
Believe you me. But the thing is, though, when you watch like a critically acclaimed movie from another country, you notice things that American cinema just typically does not do. Where this movie would have probably, if it was in the hands of an American filmmaker under control of an American studio, it would have probably given you a flashback sequence to a pivotal, destructive moment in Pansy's childhood that made her like this, which clearly this movie does not need to be successful. Would it have still been good or great even? Very possible. But it doesn't need that. It also doesn't need a tidy ending either. It doesn't need a clear ending either, like kind of how we're left. Like you said, it's kind of an oh shit moment, this movie, and then credits, how it ends. The thing that this movie did that doesn't happen very often, because a lot of American movies end with a bow in some ways, or like the saga is over, this chapter is closed. I really thought about these characters for a long time after, like what happens next. We will never see these characters again.
I really hope we never do. I really hope we don't.
They're like friends of ours that have fallen out of contact. We hope for the best while trying to make ourselves happy in ways in which we think we know. And that's what your hope is for these characters. And believe me, we don't need a too hard two truths, but two truths and a lie.
Thank you.
But Mike Legal will leave you guessing. He's 82 years old, man. Guy's got a finite number of years left on this planet. But this is one of those movies where after the credits roll, I really thought about these characters quite often. The Holdovers was probably another one last year that like the same thing, where I thought about these characters. They lived in my mind, and that's really the sign of an outstanding movie. I also, before I just give my star rating and just really put a bow on my own thoughts, I talked about Marianne Jean-Baptiste. I think she should have won the Oscar, and she didn't even fucking get nominated. Like.
Can you detail that again? What was so she won an award that usually leads to nomination?
Yes, she won. I'm trying to find it here. She won.
Not a BAFTA.
Not a BAFTA. No,
well, maybe she did, but I don't know.
It may possibly.
But you're talking about a different one.
Yes, I'm looking through here. Actually, I'm sorting the Wikipedia list.
But she won in a she
won Best Actress at the New York Film Critics Circle. That's the largest, okay. I believe the largest film circle. Now there's different associations, societies, and everything of circle. I think it's the largest film critics circle in America. She won Best Actress. That is usually, if you win Best Actress, I think in the last 20 years for the New York Film Critics Circle, you're a shoo-in to at least be nominated for Best Actress at the Oscars. Because that, and it makes sense. New York's connection to Hollywood. It makes total sense. She is the first actress I think I saw in 23 years that won the award for Best Actress from the New York critics that did not get a nomination for actress at the Oscars.
Just to be clear, this is the 2024 Oscars that she should have been, that we are saying she should have been eligible
Yes,
for.
that was this year's Oscars for last year's movies. Yes.
So
2025 Oscars
Okay.
for films of 2024.
Got it. Okay.
That's the confusing part about the Oscars
Yes,
being the
yeah.
start of a new calendar year.
I do it every year. So we're talking about Anora, like Best Picture Anora.
Correct.
That year.
Correct.
So the actresses in a leading role were, of course, Mikey Madsen for Anora, Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, I'm butchering them, Carla Sofia Gascon for Amelia Perez, Demi Moore, The Substance, and Fernando Torres, I'm Still Here. And then you could have added Jean-Baptiste, Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths, right?
And I'm not going to play the addition subtraction
No,
game.
I'm not doing that either.
Especially having, I would only do that if I've seen all those movies, and I haven't.
Uh-huh.
I would only do that if I've seen all the movies. I cannot speak about I'm Still Here, and I can't speak about Amelia Perez. But I do think that she was probably, after watching this, because some people levied that, and it made me want to see Hard Truths even more, because I already knew about it at the time. But a lot of people were levying that she was the biggest snub, because most people, there really weren't that many this year that were well documented and publicized, really, because Wicked got a lot too. So like Wicked was bound to be the one, if it was gonna be one that was going to draw the headlines of getting snubbed, it was gonna be Wicked. That didn't happen. People were happy about that, so it didn't. With there weren't a lot of major snubs this year. This is the biggest one, in my opinion. This is the biggest one because it's a phenomenal performance. I kind of just contradicted myself, though, because I said, in talking about Marianne Jean-Baptiste, I also want to give credit to Michelle Austin, too, as the emotional soul of the movie, because it needed a character that was somewhat gregarious, that was friendly, that was sunny in her disposition. She is just lovely. She reminds me, and this is like way too close to home. My mother was a nurse. She reminds me a lot of one of my mother's close friends. She's got the same kind of disposition. She's passed away, my mother's friend. She died, actually, I think about maybe like less than a year before my mother passed. Wow. But she reminds me a lot of her, especially on rewatch. She's got that same sort of sunny disposition. Like, she's just very, like, she felt like a grandmother to me the very first time I met her. You know what I mean? Like, she really caring. I love the way Michelle Austin plays her character too. And I love the haircutting scenes. You know, and I love that. Just the random, like, little, morsels of information where the one sister loathes conversation and loathes people. Here's a woman whose entire part of the unwritten duty of a cosmetologist or a stylist is to be a decent conversationalist. Is to be at least decent, at least be capable of small talk, and then often that ends up being who's cheating whose car's parked next door, But she is phenomenal in that role, Michelle Austin too. So I want to give her flowers too. Yeah. But this is a 4-star movie for me. This is one of those, and it happens every year because I can't see everything in the calendar year, but I have to make my list, and then I wind up getting the runoff in January into February. This would have made my top 5, I think, for last year, if I saw it within the window of like up until like January 10th when I make my list. If I would have seen it in that window, this probably would have at least made my top 10 very much my top 5. It's a 4-star movie for me, Hard Truth.
Yeah, this is like holistically, this movie was snubbed because this could have been a contender for best writing, original screenplay.
I agree.
So, but for me, this one I hope at least makes the rounds of therapy Reddit or therapy TikTok or what have you, or just the psychological round of things, because this is such a windfall for character, for depth of writing, for simplicity in filmmaking, even though there are, again, the biggest steps are often the quietest, or whatever that metaphor is. You know what I'm saying, right? You don't realize it's good because it's so simple until you see something bad, right? But in so many ways, Marianne Jean-Baptiste shows us again, I just go back to my angle, which is that shows us what life is like for certain people. And not just that, but this whole cast and this whole movie shows us what life can be like for everyone. And the tendrils of and lifelines that we need in our lives, and the misery that we have the ability to spread. So much that is said here without superpowers, without magic, without, big fancy explosions. Some, like, I know not to get all Reddit, but like drama movies don't get enough love, particularly from me. They really don't. And I only have so much time. As someone who saw the re-release of Shin Godzilla in 4K in theaters,
Oh, you did?
I am so glad that I was able to see Hard Truths, and the easiest 4 out of 4 stars that I could give a movie for this. Yeah,
I knew it was going to be worth a trip to the library.
100%.
I knew it was going to be worth it.
Most trips are worth the trip to the library, but this one especially so.
That is true. Check your local libraries for this thing, because it's available to rent across a handful of platforms too. It's also on if you have a Showtime subscription via Paramount Plus. I know, very convenient. Showtime getting rid of that app was the worst thing they ever fucking did, in my opinion. But you can get it if you have Showtime through Paramount. You can watch this thing, but if not, I recommend going to the library. An underrated activity in America. Though I will say this, though, as much as is saying that, and I love just bringing it back to libraries, though, I will say every community I've been a part of, the 3 different communities I've been a part of, whenever I have gone, unless I go when it really first opens, the library has been fairly busy.
Okay.
Which is really nice.
Yeah.
When I watched that Robot Dreams, because remember I saw that a few months before you guys did, because it wasn't available anywhere. Catherine and I were at the library. We have our library dates, and we went, and I saw they had flyers, or they had like advertisements. They were like, we're showing Robot Dreams on this random Thursday at 7:00. And I told Catherine, I said, we have to go to this. I said, this thing looks really interesting. I don't really know what it's about, but it's got really nice animation, and it's the most acclaimed animated movie last year. It was nominated for the Oscars. So we went. I didn't know how many people were going to be there, because I'm like, this is not a mainstream movie by any means. There was about 30 people, all different ages, kids, older people, and everything. And I'm like, they do those screenings very often, of usually Oscar-nominated movies. They'll do these like once a month Thursday night screenings. They actually did a Nora a few months ago. So they're not like even discriminatory towards like even especially movies like that are racier or anything too. So just FYI, your library offers a hell of a lot more than you probably think. So I know it. I know every library I've ever been in, I've always been surprised by something. You can rent game consoles at some libraries too. I didn't know that until somewhat recently too. But at any rate, though, Hard Truths, definitely check it out. 4 stars from both Dom and I. Next week is Caught Stealing, the new Austin Butler, Darren Aronofsky movie. I did not know. Catherine and I were actually talking about it, like, because there's not much out this weekend outside of Caught Stealing. And I went and looked at it. I'm like, how did I not know Darren Aronofsky's doing this? I'm kind of surprised that he that I haven't seen the trailer. I think it's because I've just really gotten good at avoiding trailers recently.
Yeah.
But he's doing it. The last movie he did was The Whale, which we didn't review on the show, with Brendan Fraser, which that movie was like, again, I quote Roger Ebert, that's a movie that filled me with sadness and loathing. That's a movie. You think this movie's rough. Hard Truths is rough. The Whale's fucking miserable. I saw that movie. I saw that movie on it, and it's cruel too. That's the thing I didn't like about the movie, is it's fucking cruel. Like I saw that on a Tuesday night at like 7:30. It was the only showing, and I was alone in the theater. That was a morose fucking. I will never watch that movie again. That was a morose movie, to say the very cruel to an almost unbearable degree. That movie was. I'm happy for Fraser, but that movie was almost unbearable. But that when he did Noah, Requiem for a Dream, Mother, so Aronofsky likes to stir the pot. This movie is interesting though. I don't know a ton about it, but if you look at the poster, real quick, I just want to say this before we sign off. If you look at the poster of it, I just noticed this. the tagline for this movie. It's got Austin Butler in it, Regina King, Zoe Kravitz, Liev Schreiber, and a handful of others. The tagline for this movie that's on the theatrical poster reads, 2 Russians, 2 Jews, and a Puerto Rican walk into a bar. That's the fucking tagline for this thing. So I'm really interested.
Is he wrong?
I'm like, it's false advertising.
He made the thing. Yeah.
Black comedy crime thriller from Darren Aronofsky. So this thing's going to be just a little bit controversial. But anyway, we will review that next week. Have Joe back too and give our take on Caught Stealing. Until then, Dom, grateful. Thanks for hosting the show. Really appreciate it, as always, when you fill in for a pinch for Joe, and have a great discussion too to go along with it. We will talk to you next week, same time, same place. For Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso, unseen but still loved, and yours truly, this has been